Hi everybody and welcome to Matrix Live, Season 2, Episode 28, coming to you live from San Francisco International Airport, Gate A1B. So apologies in advance for any Tannoy announcements which go and make a racket in the background. I'm probably going to do this quickly so that hopefully there'll be minimum interruptions. I'm just flying back to the UK after spending all week here for the Decentralized Web Summit at the Internet Archive, which has been incredibly tiring and exhausting. Myself and Amandine have been flying the Matrix flag here, doing a whole bunch of various sessions and contributing to the summit, but also talking with anybody and everybody in the decentralization space and trying to make sure that everybody's using Matrix for their communication needs and trying to work out how we can collaborate with the other projects here, things like whether it's possible to run Matrix over IPFS for peer-to-peer Matrix experiments. A guy called Y over on the IPFS dev team is very enthusiastic about hooking Dendrite up to libp2p so that one can use WebRTC data channels and the IPFS DHT in order to discover stuff. God, I hope this isn't as loud as it sounds from here. And lots and lots of good conversations, a real focus on reputation and how we handle the whole problem of spam and abuse and how you go about curating your filters within Matrix so that if you want to get rid of the porn or if you want to get rid of the right-wing or the left-wing content or whatever, then you might have some kind of mechanism to filter your view of Matrix. And that could be as simple as looking at what's listed in the room list, or it could be whether somebody is allowed to DM you, or it could even be filtering out abusive messages from a chat room. All this sort of good discussion. In practice, this took the form of us participating in a science fair where we had a little stand and showed off Riot to everybody who came around. Had a good chat with Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who created the web. He came over and chatted for ages about the sort of overlap between what we're doing and what he's doing with the Solid project. Can't remember if there were any major conclusions there, other than trying to be on each other's radar, I guess. We had a really interesting discussion on regulation of all the exciting things. I ended up participating in a legal panel with a bunch of lawyers. I was the only guy who wasn't a lawyer, and there was a big argument over whether GDPR was actually a good or bad thing for the internet. A lot of the lawyers reckoned it was bad because regulation slows everything down. I actually think it's good because it forced us to be a lot more decentralized with Matrix than we would have otherwise in terms of migrating our IDs eventually from DNS to public keys in order to break the kind of identifying characteristics of them. So that you have per room identifiers rather than global MX IDs, which improves your privacy massively. So thank you to the EU for doing that. And by the way, all of these were recorded, I think, or almost all of them were recorded and should be published by the Internet Archive in the coming weeks. What else did we do? Amandine took the main stage with Zuku from Zcash or Zcash and a couple of other folks to discuss the governance and structure of their respective projects and critically the growing pains that we've experienced over the last couple of years. I didn't see it because I was actually double scheduled against it in the regulation workshop, but when it's online, it should be an interesting watch. We also did our sort of main thing, which was an hour-and-a-half workshop on decentralized communication. And what we decided to do was to not make it all about Matrix, as egomaniacal and tempting as that might be, but instead really do a survey of the whole decentralized communication space right now and how it's evolved since the 2016 summit, where we were basically the only people doing decentralized comms. And so what we did was to pick 6 projects, Matrix, of course, Secure Scuttlebutt, which people might be familiar with as a really, really cool peer-to-peer microblogging and synchronized database platform, which in some ways is very similar to Matrix, but not quite as real-time focused. Mastodon, Status, of course, who funded us back in January, Vuvuzela, which is the metadata protecting chat system, and finally Briar, which you may be familiar with as a peer-to-peer communication project that is very, very similar to Matrix in that it's decentralized DAGs of messages, but the catch is that it runs on Android peer-to-peer rather than using the client-server model that Matrix uses, and it also has a very compact binary line protocol. So in many ways it's more advanced than we are. And it was really fun to basically install all of these projects and play with them, show them off. The Secure Scuttlebutt guys came along, and so they spoke about their platform and their solutions themselves, and hopefully it was really fun. I had fun, at least, for everybody who came. So thanks to those who came in person. Unfortunately, this one wasn't recorded because it was in a 50-person room or so, and they didn't have a camera in there. But I encourage you to go and look at all of those projects anyway, and I'll go and publish in fact, I'll go and upload a PDF with the notes from the slides which I did for the project anyway, for the talk anyway. We also did a UI and UX panel, which was Amandine and a bunch of other folks talking about the whole challenge of how you improve user experience in a decentralized space, especially for a world where data might come first. And there was a bit of a meme that went around the conference talking about kill the apps. You know, what is the world like if data is first again, and that app is just something that you happen, a tool that you apply to your data. You know, where are the data browsers that we might have today? Windows Explorer doesn't quite cut it, and Finder certainly doesn't cut it. So where is the sort of browser interface to all of your decentralized data that you can then apply tools to? Also lots of discussion about how you make decentralization even make sense to users, because obviously it's a pretty geeky thing. And that went down really well. And then finally we organized a spontaneous pop-up talk, because there was a kind of window where anybody could go and propose talks, and we did one on reputation, the stuff I was talking about at the beginning, in terms of how do you stop abuse in terms of morally relative reputation systems, so that I can go and, I know, downvote somebody because I think they're a idiot, but somebody else might choose to upvote them, and who's to say whether I'm right or whether the other person's right, and how you basically develop these shared reputation grey lists, or possibly blot lists, depending on how flexibly you implement it. And there weren't any massive conclusions. There were about 20 of us sitting around just discussing this problem. A bunch of people from Urbit came along, which was nice to think, and it was just a lot of really inspiring and thought-provoking stuff, which hopefully will filter back into Matrix in terms of making us a bit more, well, basically reigniting our desire to go and make sure that Matrix is successful as a decentralized comms project, and also hopefully make most of some of the kind of friends that we've met along the way over the last week in terms of helping them, and perhaps them doing things which will help Matrix too. So yeah, in terms of the rest of Matrix this week, I've no idea really. I've been stuck in San Fran. Riot 16 finally launched on web, and so I think that's generally a massive improvement with the new Jitsi stuff, as well as the new Composer. The new Composer does have a couple of nasty bugs still, my fault, I'm afraid, which have crept in, which I know Dave has been working away on trying to fix, and meanwhile Bruno has been blitzing away trying to finish off a lazy loading implementation that should reduce Riot's memory and CPU by a factor of about 3, and I hear that's going pretty well. Also on iOS, Manu's been doing the same work on iOS, and says that it's a massive improvement, that following permalinks is now practically instant rather than taking like 3, 4, 5 seconds, so that would be really fun. I need to play with it, I guess, when I'm back, or possibly in the flight. What else is going on? Synapse 33.1 is an important security update. Whilst documenting the server-to-server stuff, Travis discovered some embarrassing thinkos on how Federation is implemented in terms of the security model, and so this security patch fixes that, meaning that well, there was basically a vulnerability where if you knew an event ID, you could get at the contents of the event even if you didn't have permission to. It's now fixed, please upgrade. And otherwise, probably the biggest excitement is all of the spec work that Travis has been doing, going through trying to fill all of the gaps in the server-to-server API. And there is a big mega bug which is linked up up the page on this Matrix, This Week in Matrix, which goes and lists all the checkboxes of the things which need to be done, and it's really looking quite promising. The biggest issue is that we need to review it all, and that's basically blocked on VDH or Eric or possibly myself, possibly Dave, as the sort of longest experts in how all this stuff was put together in the first place, and we're working our way as quickly as we can through the backlog. But the aim is to get it all done by the end of August, and then we can cut a 0.0.0 R0 of the server-to-server spec at last, and for the first time ever, we will have stable releases of the Matrix spec cut on all APIs. So, exciting times over the next couple of weeks, and I will stop trying to talk over the top of the tannoy and wish you all a wonderful weekend, and thank you for continuing to support Matrix. Fun times ahead.